especially that of Hausa Fulani extractions in the southern part of the country, is dragging an already sick nation into another disastrous and dangerous locus. Those calculated acts clearly point to a deliberate plot to upset the delicate harmony that exists in the country and exacerbate the distrust among its citizenry. Those plots are all in a bid to create fear and tension and distract the Ummah, thereby making it vulnerable to the evil designs of mischief makers, which threatens the fundamental basis of the nation, going beyond stoking the embers of ethnic chauvinism and tribal irredentism to wholesale killings. The true situation is that the perpetrators of these devilish acts are crossing the red line, knowing fully that no ethnic group has a monopolistic possession of violence. It is heartbreaking that bloodletting in this part of the world is becoming a norm, with daily occurrences of unimaginable violent crimes against innocent citizens going on unabated. But as Muslims, true patriots, and the majority to stakeholders in the affairs of this country, we believe that given the will, the commitment, and determinations to give selfless service, much can be achieved to arrest this sad situation before it degenerates to a point of no return, as recently mischievously asserted by a U.S. report. Considering the above situation, the Council, after a wide and robust consultations, deemed it obligatory to practice the teachings of our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that says, concerning Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, and also the sayings of the Holy Quran, wa amruhum shura bainahum, to remind ourselves that Muslims are brothers, irrespective of their ethnic or tribal inclinations, and to reject calculated plan to divide us along ethnic and tribal sentiments, which will further cause disunity among the Muslims. Hence, the decision to organize this meeting themed threads to the unity of the Ummah and the future of Nigeria, citizenship and nationhood. At this crucial moment, at an auspicious time, when members of the National Assembly are consulting Nigerians on the way out of the quagmire, the Council, in collaboration with Jamaat Nasr Islam and the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, representing the Muslim majority in this country, purposely conceived this idea of organizing a 2-day symposium to spearhead the effort to serve a conference for real heart-to-heart discussion among the Muslims from all ethnic groups and regions of Nigeria, to take stock of these developments in the light of the teachings of Islam, put our house together, and chart a way forward as a united Ummah in the resolution of the problems facing our country. The symposium is expected to feature presentations and discussions from eminent scholars and opinion molders drawn from various organizations, professionals, Islamic scholars, and academia, as well as the participation of all major religious organizations, political and community leaders from across the country. I crave our indulgence to actively participate in the proceedings of the meeting in order to have rich and meaningful deliberations. Inshallah. Once again, I welcome you all to this assemblage and thank you all most sincerely for honoring our invitation. Finally, I must extend, without mentioning names, our deepest appreciations to those that contributed financially and otherwise to the realization of this gathering. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you all for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Sheikh Abdul Rashid Hadiyatullah, the Vice President, Spring Council for Sharia in Nigeria, for this speech. Next on the agenda is opening remarks by the chairman of the occasion, Alhaji Bashir Usman Tofa. But before then, let me recognize in our midst the former governor, executive governor of Kano State, and also former Minister of Defense of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Malam Ibrahim Shekarau. Sir, you're welcome. Next is Dr. Yahaya Amin, the former Chief of Staff, Kaduna State. Also in our midst is Serkin Auyo, who is representing the Emir of Hadija, Alhaji Umar Muhammad Baffa from Jigawa State. Sir, you're welcome. In our midst also is Oba Dr. Abdul Rashid Akambi, Oluwa of Iwo Land from Osun State. You are welcome, sir. Let me also recognize Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, who is going to give us the lead paper. He is the lead presenter of the first paper of this symposium. You are welcome, sir. May I call on Dr. Khalid Abubakar Aliyu to the high table, please. He is the Secretary General of Jama'atu Nasr al-Islam. And we now move on to the item on the agenda, that is the opening remarks by the chairman of the occasion, person of Alhaji Bashir Usman Tofa. Sir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahabihi ajma'in. Distinguished guests, they said there is no more protocol, so I will just say that I respect everybody who is here, and I thank those who have been able to come. This scene is very, very important symposium, which, as you know, is Islamic perspective on the current situations in Nigeria. Well, we know Islam is our religion, and we know what it says, and what it can do, and what it cannot do. Current situations in Nigeria are topical. First of all, on top of it is security, issues of security. And there are issues of corruption, issues of lawlessness in the country. These are very current. There are many others. Well, Islam, ladies and gentlemen, has said whatever needs to be said about these ills in our society, in most societies. The scripture is there. Islam has made its point, has condemned all those activities that are not worthwhile, that are sinful, and that is what Islam has done. And it has told us what we need to do here and the consequences of those things, whether they are good or bad. And Islam has taught us the consequences. Islam has taught us also the consequences of our actions, both here and in the hereafter. But that is what Islam can do or can say. But the doing, the implementation of the scripture, that is the duty of the Muslims, to make sure that those things that Islam has mentioned and has condemned, have been implemented by Muslims wherever they are. So what Islam can do, can say, has said it. But what Muslims will do, they have to do it. Unfortunately, Muslims all over the world, not just in Nigeria, are in disarray, disunity. That is our contention. Wherever we are disunited. I remember a program that I saw in London of one Mr. George Galloway. Somebody asked Mr. Galloway and said, Mr. Galloway, what is it that the Muslims need to do to be a force to reckon in the world? He said, well, the Muslims need to be united. They need to know that they have just one God. They need to know that they have one Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They need to acknowledge that they have one book. They need to know and respect all the rituals that they do together exactly the same. They fast in Ramadan. They pray the Salat 5 times a day. Nobody prays Zuhur 3 rakahs, or Isha 3 rakahs, or 2 rakahs. All Muslims perform the same rituals, exactly the same. They go to pilgrimage in the same place in Mecca, and they visit Medina. They visit the Prophet in Medina together. The scale of zakat is the same for all the Muslims in the world. But the Muslims have one religion, and they need to know that they have one religion. Where they are different in opinions, in teachings, in culture, and so on and so forth, they need to set those things aside. But they are disunited. And wherever Muslims are killed in the world, you will find the hands of Muslims in it. They are either Shia or they are Sunni, or they are either this sect or that sect. Now this disaster has curtailed the ability of Muslims to do what they need to do together to make themselves felt, to make their presence felt, and to be able to act in unison and bring about the changes that they need to bring about. So even here in Nigeria, our ability to bring about changes, are really restricted because we are disunited. We are either Sunni or Shia, we are either Qadriya or Izala or this and that. We forget that we are members of the same religion. The moment we begin to judge ourselves, and judgment is the responsibility of God Almighty, to judge who is a Muslim, who is a better Muslim, who is a worse Muslim. There are certain things that nobody will ask you about those things in the hereafter. I know, and if I'm wrong, somebody can teach me because I'm not really that educated. I know that nobody will ask me in the grave whether I'm Sunni or I'm Shia. Nobody will ask me whether I'm Qadri or I'm Izala or I'm this or that. The only thing God wants, like we had in the ayah on Surah Al-Hujurat that has been quoted, is our taqwa. That is what makes the difference between Muslims, and that is what God Almighty will judge. He will never judge anybody on the basis that he is Sunni or is Shia. Now this is what we need to get rid of if we really want to be a great nation. Wherever Muslims are being killed in this world, you see the hands of Muslims. Or it is the Muslims themselves doing it, killing themselves. Wherever it is, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, and now in Yemen. If they are not doing it, they are doing it in conjunction with others. George Galloway said he is a member, or he was a member of the British Parliament for 30 years. He said if you ask each member of Parliament what is the difference between Sunni and Shia, he says they don't care, they don't know. All they care about is that they have to continue to make you different, to make you disunited. Once you are disunited, you are weak. Once you are weak, then anybody can trample up in you. So my call, and I'm sure that the paper will look into all these issues, what bothers me most among us Muslims is this disunity. And we know that God Almighty has said in Surah Ali Imran, ayah number 103, that we should hold on to the rope of Allah and not be disunited. But every sect, every section, every malam, every imam has thrown his own rope, and he wants people to catch it, and God's rope is somewhere hanging. People have neglected it. So my call is that let us be better Muslims. Let us recognize ourselves as Muslims, and let God Almighty do his judgment. We have no authority to judge ourselves. If a Muslim like yourself is doing something that you believe is absolutely wrong, then you have to talk to him in a manner that he or she will understand. That is the way we go. So the ills in this country are so many. Muslims alone cannot solve them. We need Christians to also work with, so because it is our country together. It's not just our sole responsibility, it's the responsibility of all Nigerians. But once Muslims are united, they can take the lead. They can invite anybody they like, and then they can chart a better course for this country. So my admonition to all of us, I know a lot of us are well learned, and we all know what I'm talking about. I just like to appeal to us, please, for God's sake, for our own sakes, let us put the unity of all Muslims in the forefront and make sure that the little differences that separate us are depressed. And when they come up, we have a way, where we can collectively sit together, talk it over, and make sure that we resolve those kind of minor issues. With these few remarks, I'd like to welcome you all. And the chairman of the occasion, I wanted to take an hour to talk about, but they told me that, please, chairman, just 5 minutes is enough. So my 5 minutes is up, and I thank you very much indeed. And I hope we will have a very fruitful, deliberate, useful discussions here. And I hope we will take decisions that will enhance our march, to unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for that 5 minutes remarks. Muslims should be good Muslims, and to avoid the rancor that translates at times into losing lives. We should remember how we are commanded to hold fast, and stubbornly so, to the cable of Allah and not to the ropes of various scholars that want to lead us to themselves and not to Allah. Before I call on the lead paper presentation, I think my colleague Engineer Abdurrahman has one or two announcements to make, after which I will launch, as it were, the lead paper presentation. Engineer.
Thank you, Ustaz. It's just a point of correction, and sorry for that mix-up. In my earlier introduction of Malam Ibrahim Shekaro, I recognize him as the former minister.
Announce them and promise God no more.
It's a mix-up. There were two.
There is always more to
Jama'ar da na kirgo baya sai ka kula da irinsu, su suke muzanta sahabbai kai to da irin halinsu. Dukkan da na ce su bi sunna sai su furta ina damunsu, kun ga sun bata ba addini sun batar da mutanen kulle. Mun yi murna da sunna TV dan uwa ku taho mu ilale. Ba su kaunar dukkan sahabbai har da alul baiti iyaye. Sun ka zagi Umar da Sadiku ku duba 'yan aljanna tagwaye. Yanzu duba mutum mai kunya Usmanu da bai da kawaye. Har jinin manzonmu Aliyu batunsa ne masu ke tsalle-tsalle. Mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu hilale. To akwai wasu wanda wali sun ka bauta wadansu gwale mu sun ka kirkiri yin bidu.
Ambassador Ahmad Nuhu Bamalli, ably represented by Alhaji Aminu Yakubu Wambai, Wakil Raya Kasan Zazzau. Sir, you're welcome to the occasion. We now go on with the program, as my colleague Ustaz Abu Bakr Siddiq has said earlier. Ustaz.
The first paper, Assalamu alaikum, the first paper is titled The Nigerian Federation and Management of Our Diversity, a Critical Evaluation and Need for Review. And the lead presenter is Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmad, already introduced. Dr. Hakim, please. After the paper presentation, we shall call on some of the discussants to discuss the paper.
Okay. The Emir of Lafia, should also come to the high table, sir. We're sorry for that mix-up. The Emir of Lafia, sir.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to try and be quick with my paper. I understand that the live coverage of this opening program will last for only 2 hours. After my paper, I understand there will be 1 or 2 discussants. I can't start without making a comment. Forgive me for observing. If you look at the program of this event, a large number of people have been invited, leaders of the country, leaders of faith, who are not here. I hope that they have genuine reasons for staying away from an event of this importance. If they don't, they have done a great disservice to their position as leaders, and they have done a great disservice to us as followers. Leaders must never close themselves in, because they close people out. It doesn't matter what you hear. If you're a leader, you need to be in a place where the people you lead say things. Out of 100 things they say, 95% may be complaints and grievances, but it is the responsibility of the leader to hear those things and act on them. Again, I'm being charitable. It is my prayer that those who were invited, who accepted to be here but are not here, have genuine reasons for not being here. If they are staying away because they believe that things will be said here that they don't like to hear or will make them uncomfortable, then it is, to be polite, irresponsible. I'm grateful to the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs in Nigeria, Jama'at Nasr al-Islam, and and Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria for the opportunity to contribute to a discussion that is vital to the support of our country in the context of the challenges which threaten it. I'm impressed that religious organizations like these can venture to provide a platform for exploring a very sensitive set of related issues that may not leave the management of our faith, its leadership, or its institutions unscathed. I have no doubt that the entire nation will benefit from a forthright and informed dialogue, such that we will have at this symposium, such as we will have in this symposium, about what makes up our strengths and weaknesses as a country of great diversity, with the promise and the potential to buckle under its accumulated limitations. I've taken the liberty to approach my task in this paper by focusing on a very sensitive and vital element, which represents one of the building blocks of our federal system, as well as the weak links in the chain. This is one of the issues. This is the issue of the place of identity as the basis of our federal system and the distortions which we have brought to bear on it. Any responsible discussion on basic identity in Nigeria is bound to stumble around the irony that the one issue which today represents a major impediment to our progress beyond the precarious stage where we seem to be stuck is that virtually none of us chose his faith, ethnicity, or religion, or region. And it's also the basis of much of the damaging conflicts in which we are engaged. It is very important to remember this. None of us, virtually none of us, unless you're talking about those who converted from one faith to another, none of us chose their faith, place to be born, or the ethnic group that they prefer to be born in. As we speak, ethnic and religious identities have been thrust to the forefront of the struggle for power, and they threaten to scuttle an arrangement which has progressively failed to develop beyond its ideals. Violence and threats remind us that our politics has failed to engineer a citizen, and leaders who benefited from exploiting identity politics are incapable of containing its expanding influence. Indeed, they are riding harder on our weak points, and they leave many of us to wonder how they plan to govern a wrecked country, assuming, that is, they managed to keep this country together enough to have elections in 2023. A nation is made up of citizens, defined by law in very clear terms. Citizens, however, have identities which define them further and often pitch their legal status against their political status. Our Constitution defines a Nigerian citizen in Chapter 3 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, that indigene and the settler are not legal entities. There's nowhere in the Constitution where you will see an indigene or settler mentioned. And the Constitution mentions indigenous only in reference to qualifications for citizenship. That is Section 25, subsection 1. Yet the indigene has acquired a profound presence in our lives and in the manner we organize the struggle for power and economic resources. The elaborate constitutional provisions for the fundamental rights of the citizen have been entirely blind to the indigene, or for that matter, the monster it has created, the settler. Chapter 4 of the Constitution outlines, among others, rights to life, dignity of the human person, private and family life, thought, conscience and religion, expression and press, peaceful assembly and association, movement and acquisition of property, to apply equally to each citizen. going to skip one or two paragraphs because I think that you all have the papers. I'm going to move to, if you have the text, to page 3. A federal arrangement is primarily an acceptance that countries will be basically designed to accord recognition to cultural, spatial, and even political pluralism, and sharing of powers between federating units and the center, which gives substance and meaning to identities, values, and the aspirations of all citizens. Significantly, federal systems define citizenship at the national level, and in various forms and scale, allows federating units the scope to design and determine how they organize governance and other matters which influence lives of citizens who live within them. Federating units design mechanisms which further delineate populations that can lay claim to them as units of origin through many means, including registration, obligations, and entitlements, access to welfare or certain privileges, none of which, however, abridge or deprive any citizen from any other parts of the country their fundamental rights. Conflicts over these attempts to create a state and a national citizen are endemic in all federal systems, and they have been resolved in most instances by recourse to the judicial process, and in many countries by an alert agency which polices intergovernmental relations. Time and diligent commitment to the ideals and practice of federalism have also helped many countries to move beyond major crises over basics. The fabled response of the Premier of Northern Nigeria, Sir Ahmadu Bello Sardauna of Sokoto, to the suggestion by President Nnamdi Azikiwe that both of them should forget their differences comes to mind here. No, the Premier said, we should understand our differences, not forget them. Federal systems are highly credible and stable creations, but as in the case of Nigeria, they are necessary and inevitable. They operate best if certain assumptions are made in their design and operations, and these are policed diligently through a political process that is rooted in the philosophy of federalism and led by a leadership that is willing to operate within legal and political boundaries. Significantly, a federal system that will survive and grow needs these critical elements. One, it needs a structure that captures the plural nature of the country and designs a federation that captures national identity and unity at the national level and diversity. Those of us who have followed the recent debates about amending the Constitution would have come across a number of people who are talking about ethnic nationalities, a federation of ethnic nationalities. Our federation is not a federation of ethnic nationalities. Otherwise, you will create 522 regions or states, where a federation of Nigerians, that every state contains nationalities. And our ethnic groups are not nationalities. There's only one nationality, and there's only one citizen in Nigeria. That is the Nigerian. So there is mischief when people insist that the only way you restructure Nigeria is to go back to a federation of ethnic nationalities. That is a fallacy, and it is not founded in history or reality. Two, a constitution that creates one citizen, irrespective of the place of domicile, and federating units that have real powers to create institutions, systems, and processes, and laws and regulations that will determine how local populations live. Three, it has to create a fair balance in power, responsibilities, and resources, such that a central government has enough authority to undertake its responsibilities, such as defense and security, external relations, and promotion of peace and unity, and federation units that have real powers and resources to add significant value to the lives of citizens domiciled in them. Four, must have an arrangement that does not abridge the rights and privileges of the citizen on grounds of identities other than citizen of the country, except in instances where laws and regulations are made by federating units which are consistent with provisions of the Constitution. 5, no limitation should exist to the basic rights of the citizen, for instance, on grounds of his being non-indigenous, settler, or any identity such as faith or ethnicity. Nigeria has existed as a federation for longer than a century. In a real sense, we are all settlers in this country from the moment this country was coupled together by the force of colonization. Again, let me address a fallacy that has become current. People talk about indigenous people as if there are non-indigenous Nigerians. From the moment the British created the Nigerian colonial state, all of us became settlers because that was not our country before the British came. The British created a country of Nigerians. Nobody is a settler. And therefore, no community can claim to be an indigenous community and another community that is not an indigenous community. We need to remind those people, again, who use this kind of terms very, very wrongly, and we know that there are political agendas behind them. Colonialism created one country, one people, one citizen, one indigenous population, colonized population. We became citizens of a colonized country, which gradually became independent within a constitutional democratic framework and a structure that ought to have had room for growth and development of the citizen. As citizens, we all had other prominent identities, but the nature of our political competition tended to reinforce them. The primary level identity ought to have been the citizen, our Nigerian citizenship, with other identities being faith, ethnicity, and location. Ideally, none of these should have posed a threat to each other, but they did, and they do. In 100 years, the growth of the Nigerian citizen was stunted by the pervasive and consistent growth of secondary level identities. To be clear, there ought not to be a problem with being a Nigerian and Muslim or Christian and Ijo or Kanuri and living in Lagos or Gusau. But we have conducted our politics even under colonial rule to make identity the prime factor in competition over political assets and other privileges. Our current federation speaks volume of political engineering that put premium on ethnicity, religion, and the imperatives of control by the center. And its failure is indicated by the persistent demand of other identities such as indigene and settler and state of origin and regions and state of origin and regions to be the major determinants in the competition for power and economic resources. The elastic nature of identity politics appears lost on us. The more you yield to it as the prime determinant in group relations, the more you have to chase it as it pervades and crowds out other factors in even the minutest decisions in resource allocation. There is no limit to identity politics. No matter how little you fracture Nigerians, there will be identities that will keep demanding to be fractured even further. It is important to state that a political system that works well will capture and process these multiple identities into a system that does not represent a liability for citizens or groups. That, however, will be a political process managed by leaders who place premium on governing a complex nation, reducing its liabilities and increasing its potential to grow into a nation of citizens and laws. Our politics has unfortunately been about state capture, a phenomenon and a goal that throws all the negatives into the competition and uses public offices for personal gain and political patronage. Exploiting or inventing new fault lines has become standard operating procedure for our politicians. The nation has paid a very high price for some of these weaknesses in the strategies adopted in political competition. Today, we are more divided along ethnic, religious, and regional lines than we have ever been. We see evidence of failure of political leaders to manage our pluralism and create less stress in many of our experiences. We are yet to come to terms with the roots and development of Boko Haram as an uprising against a state that had no capacity to remove its underpinnings, that is, Boko Haram's underpinnings, before it became the phenomenon that it is. We still fail to understand that limiting the practice and scope of faith when it does not threaten other basic rights of other faiths is a major source of conflict. Our perception of secularism is severely limiting and damaging. Because it fails to define the rights of citizens to live in accordance with their faith and still be Nigerian. We see this in the controversy over Muslim schoolgirls wearing hijab in Kwara State, in the infantile provocations that about Arabic characters in our currencies, and in numerous skirmishes over access to places of worship. Monumental failure to understand the implications of an intensely religious people living in a country that is committed to not developing a state religion leaves a huge chasm which is exploited by people who have strong interest in deepening fault lines. There may be no perfect solution to this, but there does not appear to be an end to the capacity of our politicians to exploit faith and turn it into political capital. It would be foolhardy to dismiss those who genuinely believe that there is a jihad being waged by the Buhari administration, using, among others, Fulani herdsmen and crude nepotism. Because that is the reality for them. There is no denying the potency of the campaigns in the last two elections, that voting along religious lines is a major religious obligation. Muslim and Christian clergy have made fortunes peddling dangerously divisive religious fallacies about politicians. And a forum such as this one will understand that many of them will account for creating some of the huge failures that did us today on the day of judgment. Politicians and the clergy have sown seeds of religious conflicts, most of which wait for the slightest stimulation to bloom, as we recently saw in Gombe State and in many parts of Kaduna and Plateau states. Our brand of politics has squeezed the space for the citizen with rights and expanded the powers of others who benefited from them. The non-indigent and settler is routinely treated under discriminating laws and regulations, access to economic opportunities, places of worship, and political offices. The definition of settler has been so politicized that it is now a veritable tool for disempowering huge segments of the population. The nation witnessed some years ago a governor in one of the eastern states, sacking teachers from neighboring states, from his state. In Kaduna State, the settler is defined along ethno-religious lines and marginalized by a political practice which has defined beneficiaries in very narrow terms. The Hausa Fulani is quite possibly the largest ethnic group in southern Kaduna State, yet it is virtually non-existent in political dispensation of the region. In Plateau and Taraba states, Muslims constitute a huge segment of the population, yet they are severely underrepresented by a political system that defines them as outsiders. In Kebbi State, a sizable population of Christians do not find space in the political system. There are millions of Nigerians from the southern part of the country who live on narrow margins in northern communities, limited either by choice or by a restricting environment from participating in the political process of accessing benefits that are otherwise available to other citizens. Igbo Muslims now find it hard to live with the other Igbo in Igbo land because their faith is defined as alien to the Igbo ethnic group. In most parts of the southeast and south-south, northerners who have lived for decades with local communities cannot access jobs, political appointments, or places of worship because they are seen primarily as settlers and non-indigenous. A peculiarly Nigerian creation is a Hausa young person born and bred in Ebonyi State, speaks more Igbo than Hausa, but cannot get a job in Ebonyi State as a citizen because his state of origin is Kano. No, in Kano, because where his father moved to live to Abakaliki because his birth certificate says he was born in Abakaliki. I understand, seeing my brother here next to me, that he wants me to finish this quickly. I'll try and do that in the next 3 to 5 minutes. The arrested development of the Nigerian citizen represents a single most important threat to the unity and even survival of the country. The ethnicization of political office by politicians, many of whom swear with the Quran and the Bible to promote and protect the unity of the nation, is in full evidence today. The current events in the Southeast are directly related to the clamor for presidency in 2023. I'm going to be very clear about this. The current events in the Southeast are directly related to the clamor for presidency in 2023. So are the emergence of ethnic champions and new voices pushing for the cause of Yoruba secession. The North, which is waking up to the negative consequences of voting along ethno-religious and regional lines in the last 2 elections, feels the pressure to abandon its own basic rights to vote freely, to ethnic and regional pressure from politicians who cannot be trusted at this moment and will be even less trustworthy if they have to wrest power by blood and threat. There are many defects in the manner our constitution and federal systems are designed, but there are bigger defects in the quality of our leadership. Good leaders will make even a defective constitution tolerable. Nigeria's tragedy is that we have a constitution that requires critical scrutiny and overhaul, and a political elite that has no place in a Nigeria that needs to find a new lease of life. Restructuring, which is defined here as affecting major changes in the organization and function of Nigeria's federal system, is a critical imperative under our circumstances. It will have to be informed by one fundamental value, justice. It will have to be designed around the question of dealing with justice for every Nigerian, irrespective of his identity, location, or ethnicity. It will have to be informed by justice in the manner federating units are created, assigned responsibilities and resources, and allowed to operate as much as possible in accordance with the ideals of federalism. It must seek to do justice to our shared values and peculiarities, our faiths and obligations to the state, the rights of communities to their resources and security, and of other Nigerians who live among them. It must specifically aim to remove all distinctions between citizen, indigene, and settler, or at the very least remove all disadvantages which any Nigerian will suffer as a result of the abuse of his constitutional rights by laws, regulations, and activities by other authorities. Above all, the nation must adopt measures which prevent the emergence of bad leaders. We have to work hard to keep this country from disintegrating in 2023. We must reform the Constitution and the Electoral Act to reduce the vulnerability of political parties and the Nigerian state from capture. No one should be complacent over the threat which the current political elite pose to the nation. There is nothing in their disposition or plans that they intend to run a country on a different philosophy and ideals and reconstruct a Nigeria that will relieve our future generations of additional burdens. Of all the challenges which Nigeria faces, none is more frightening then the distinct possibility that the political elite currently playing high-risk politics with our lives, livelihood, and the survival of our country will retain power and continue leading us into decline and disaster. No guarantee that these people will not come back and continue. Allah has given us a country that is blessed with everything it needs to be great. We can obliterate distinctions and barriers between us that make us all poorer. But we have to close ranks and speak to and with each other honestly and with respect. There is nothing to support the glib talk that this country cannot fail. Nor is there any reason to believe that we are irretrievably headed for worse disasters. We have deep roots in each other's lives, but we are playing very dangerous games. Every section of this country has issues with the way some or all of our affairs of the nation are run. There's nothing in the law or the principles of leadership that says we cannot invite each other to sit down and discuss how we can reduce the tensions and grievances we all bear. It is most unlikely that President Muhammadu Buhari will yield to appeals to facilitate national discourse on the challenges. To be sure, the approach of some groups which make demands in a manner that suggests that they must have everything or nothing does not help. Nor is it even likely that a conclave knocked together under pressure from some sections will be of any value. The nation can appeal to the president, the legislature, and the governors to recognize the historic opportunity to address major deficiencies in the country's security and economic welfare. But this will achieve little with national leadership that believes its own version of our circumstances. But we must never give up. The most important responsibility we bear today is to continue to exploit avenues to engage, to seek accommodation and compromise, to isolate mischief makers and build bridges. If our country survives its current circumstances, it will be because we have all gone the extra mile to salvage it. It is easier to destroy than to build. If Nigeria fails, none of us will be without blame, and our children and their children will inherit the worst fate it is possible to define, because Nigeria's failure will be a nightmare that will haunt generations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been good to our country. We're going through a test which inshallah will survive. But we need good, strong, and honest leaders to lead us through these tests. If we make the wrong choices again, we should blame ourselves and not the leaders we choose. Thank you very much.
Takbir. I can't hear that, please. Takbir.
So Hakim Baba Ahmed there with his paper, and you can't expect less from this scholar of high repute. His intellectual erudition is one that leaves so much to talk about. I think he has been able to talk on the Nigerian Federation and the management of our diversity, a critical evaluation. And you will agree with me that there is virtually nothing that he has not touched. And I think it is one paper that will leave so much to discuss. And I think very soon discussants will, be talking, on this paper moving forward and preference solutions.
Goodwill messages. And then, of course, the rep of the Sultan will address us, and then we'll close this for the Jummah prayer, inshallah. Dr. Awal Abdullah Aliyu, Engineer, I have some announcements? Yes, before Dr. Awal comes. No.
Thank you, Ustaz Abu Bakr Sadiq Didat. The announcement is this program is being telecast on NTA, that is Nigerian Television Authority, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, Kaduna National Station, TVC, and Sunnah Television. But unfortunately, it comes to our knowledge that before the lead presenter starts his paper, TVC cut off. And unfortunately, also, Sunnah TV hooked up with the TVC. This is a very, very unfortunate situation, considering the importance of the speech, or rather the paper presented by Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, because this is a paper that each and every patriotic Nigerian would like to listen to and adhere to what the doctor has advised us on. This is very unfortunate. Dr. Awal. Dr. Awal, who's the first discussant, if he's around, please. Well, before he comes on, we have in our midst the representative of Etso of Nife, Wazir Hasken Nife, and also Ambassador Hassan Tukur, former PPS to the former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. You're all welcome. And also, we have in our midst the representative of Control General of Correction Nigerian Correction, I think it's the Nigerian Prison Service, but the name has been changed now, in the person of Ibrahim Abubakar Ahmed. You're welcome, sir. Dr. Awal Ahmed. Well, if he's not around, I think we can go to the next Professor Abubakar Sadiq Muhammad is also to discuss the paper. Professor Abubakar Sadiq Muhammad. Doctor.
That is my name, but I'm not the professor. Maybe I'll overrule that being that is my name and call on Senator Ahmad Sani Yerima Bakura to please give us his goodwill message. Distinguished Senators and Your Excellency.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وحبيبنا ونبينا ورسولنا شفينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم كثيرا. Mr. Chairman, members of the High Table, distinguished guests, participants, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I would like to begin by thanking Allah, the Almighty, and also thanking the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria for today's occasion. I want to say that personally, the paper presented today by Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed is what Nigeria requires and needs at this moment. We Nigerians should all adopt it as a working document that will move this country forward. Having listened to him, I think there is nothing much to add, but to say that personally I have adopted it, and I'm sure if we present it at any other forum, National Assembly should look at it, should deliberate at it at all levels, state assemblies, and that where Nigerian representatives will come together and the agency has given, if this issue of citizenship is properly addressed, I'm sure our political problems associated with movement of power from north to south, from east to the west, will be resolved. Because democracy is really not properly understood, or maybe mischievously misunderstood by some Nigerians. We know that it's all about election.
an election is about people voting for their choice of candidates. But you hear some ethnic groups threatening so many sort of things, saying that if they are not given power, as if power is allocated, or power is sold, or power is appointed. So I think we should go back to the tenets of, to our constitution, look at the constitution as suggested by Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed, make adequate amendments in the line of the paper he presented. I'm sure that will be our solution to Nigeria's problem. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Professor Abubakar Sadiq Muhammad, please come over. This lighting for the cameras blinds one, so I didn't see him, and I just. But it's okay. I don't know. We have listened to Yerima. Now, Prof.
Bismillah. My job is simple: to discuss Dr. Hakim Baba Ahmed's important paper. As was said by the last speaker, this paper is extremely important, and he raised so many important issues. I will discuss some of them. The most important part of the paper, one of the most important part of the paper is the area he discussed the issue of indigenous settler in Nigeria. Identity politics in this country. It has posed a serious problem for us in many parts of this country. And many people have died because of this indigenous settler conflict. I'll try to give you some of the figures I picked this morning when I was coming. As a result of this indigenous settler politics, between 1999 to 2011, 15,700 people were killed in Nigeria. By the time you add what happened in the last few years, we are going to over 50,000 Nigerians killed because of this issue of indigenous settler conflict. Quite often, this conflict degenerates, goes beyond indigenous settler. It assumes also sectarian color. That's what adds to the various deaths that we've mentioned. If you take Kaduna State, which he mentioned, for example, in one town alone in Kaduna State, during the 2011 elections, 500 people were killed in less than 24 hours. 500 people were killed. In fact, when Human Rights interviewed one of the leaders, what he said is that the boys here made it total. The boys here made it total. They will not relent. Virtually every Hausa, every Fulani, every Muslim in the area, in that town, was actually killed because of this. In fact, because one is tagged, is labeled settler, he's even not allowed to exercise his rights, which is guaranteed by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That is to say, the right to vote. Voting is extremely important. You decide who directs your affairs in the country. Voting decides who is your leader. Leaders who pass laws to actually regulate what you do in the country. Leaders who pass laws to determine whether you can live or you die. And that is why it's extremely important in politics. And yet, people are not even allowed to exercise their rights because they are deemed to be settlers in an area. If you look at what is happening in Nigeria, like one governor said in this country, even if you live in a place, in fact, it was Daria who says, you the Hausa, you the Fulani in Plateau, even if you live in Plateau for 100 years, you cannot be an indigenous of Plateau State. Now, how many years do you live in a place to become an indigenous of that very particular place? And yet, if you trace the history of many of those, of the various groups in Nigeria, a movement into the areas they cover today are recent phenomena. And if you go back to their history, their own history, what they say, it shows that the migration has been a major feature of of our existence in this country. People move from one area to the other. And if you look at the various empires that have emerged in the Nigerian area today, they were not ethnic in the sense we define them today. You know, they are territorial. If you take Oyo Empire, you have Yorubas, you have so many groups. If you take the Sokoto Jihad, a caliphate, you have Fulani, non-Fulani, so many other groups. And so even before Nigeria came into being, we did not have empires that were ethnically based. They are all territorial. Now, the very moment you begin to say somebody is not an indigene, even if he lives in an area for 100 years, you are calling for pogrom, you are calling for genocide. Because any attempt on his part to exercise his right will lead to what? Genocide. This is what we have seen in many countries of the world. So our leaders have to be very, very careful in the way they operate. Then when we go further, after discussing bringing about, the meaning of federation, as all scholars would do, Hakim again came out with the issue of the development of a citizen in Nigeria. Citizenship in Nigeria, you know, many Nigerians don't even derive their citizenship from the Constitution of Federal Republic or from the center. A prominent leader once said, he's first of all an Ijebu. Before he is a Yoruba, before he states, before Nigeria. According to Hakim, it should be the other way around. He should be a citizen of Nigeria. No, he does not see himself as a citizen of Nigeria. Now, if you don't see yourself initially as a citizen of Nigeria, how do you hope to lead the citizens of Nigeria in the first instance? This brings me to some of the issues raised by Hakim, that the various the noise we hear in Nigeria and the killings in some parts of Nigeria are all linked to the 2013 elections. But take, for example, the East. If Igbos are arguing that the next president of Nigeria has to come from the place, now Igbo elites also have to show that they want Nigeria. Now, if you have a leader who says, we don't want Nigeria, we don't want Nigeria, and at the same time the man saying the next leader should come from our ethnic group, how do you become a leader of a country you want to dismember? So they have to actually address this very fundamental issue. So the primary level of identity ought to have been our Nigerian citizenship, with other identities being faith, ethnicity, and location coming after. That is what he mentioned. But the most important thing Hakim mentioned is that there's this. He said, there are many defects in the manner our constitution and the federal system are designed, but there are bigger defects in the quality of our leadership. Good leaders will make even a defective constitution tolerable. We do not have good leaders in this country today. We have difficulties with them. Now I'll give you some of the things they do, which tells me that they do not think, they don't even want to operate according to the laws of the country. A leader wakes up in Nigeria. He gives an ethnic group quit notice. Then he makes it difficult for them to even quit. Now, what is he saying? And when he gives quit notice, he ignores the fact that there are laws in Nigeria which governs the operations of these groups. Let me break it. You said when you say quit notice, they also say that you can't travel in the night. You can't move your cattle in the night. You pass a law against that. Now, those who want to quit cannot but walk. They can't move in the daytime because of heavy trailers that ply the road. So they have to move in the night with limited traffic on the road so that they can move from one point to the other. You say they cannot do that. They are in deep forest. They are in deep forest. There are no trucks to go there to pick them to wherever they want to go in Nigeria. The only way they can leave that area is to move from one point to the other. That is defined as open grazing. You cannot do that. You say ranching. At the same time, you ban open grazing. Ranching itself is open grazing. So they don't even understand what they are saying. And then when you move forward, now, when people say, okay, we will ranch, you pass a law to say that they should not be given land, despite the fact that they are citizens of this country. No, they cannot be given land to even have their ranches. What do you want apart from chaos? Any leader who does this kind of thing wants nothing but chaos in his state or in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This has to be addressed by our own leaders. It's not a matter of touch and go at all. There are certainly many things we have to deal with in our constitution, but it cannot be dealt with the way we are going about them. You know, we have leaders who open their mouth and say rubbish in this country. Rubbish. And when people die as a result of that, they point accusing fingers at others instead of blaming themselves for the mess that we have in this country. Most of the deaths in this country are caused by leaders, by their pronouncement, by the laws they pass, by the implementation of the laws they pass themselves. And the laws, in most cases, are unjust. Finally, people in any society, people have their own demands. People make demands in any democratic system. Even in authoritarian systems, people make demands. How they get their demands respected depends upon how they make it themselves. You don't make demands, as many groups make in Nigeria, by threatening to dismember the country. You make demands by threatening the lives of other people living in your own domain. That is not demand. It's threat. And people have to learn in a democracy, it's a matter of give and take. It's a matter of discussion, compromise, and cooperation. Once we ignore the need for discussion, once we ignore the need for compromise and cooperation, then only the strong will have its way. You have to now muster a force in order to get your demands implemented. And if you do that, others will also mobilize. And what do you have? Chaos, anarchy, death, as we are seeing all over this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Engineer Abdurrahman.
Okay. The next, that is on goodwill messages, I would like to call on Senator Ibrahim Shekaro to come and say the goodwill message before Malam Ibrahim Shekaro comes up. We recognize the presence of Muhammad Malami, Commander NDLA, FCT Kaduna, representing Brigadier General Guba Marwa, retired, who is the Chief CEO of the NDLA, Sardauna Kano.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله. Chairman, distinguished and respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mr. Chairman, my goodwill message will be a brief 2 minutes true story, which I would love to share with this audience. And I'm sure from the little story, there would be some lessons and probably some guidance. Sometime in 1995, when the late Colonel Wasei was governing my dear state of Kano, there was a very disturbing incident. One Gideon, a Christian, was accused to have disrespected the Quran. Either it was that he threw it into the dustbin or something like that. There was a very serious uprising in the state against this. Obviously, that should be expected. Immediately, the police intervened, arrested him, charged him to court, and for his safety, the judge remanded him in prison. That didn't calm down the tension. And at the same time, there was an association of very exuberant youth called Muslim Brothers. They were hot-headed Muslim brothers who were propagating the true operations of the Quranic constitution. Somehow, miraculously, these exuberant youth found their way into the Kano Central Prison, despite its security, cut off the head of Gideon, came out to the street, put it on top of a very tall stick, or long stick, and were parading the streets of Kano. The then head of state, General Sani Abacha, having come from Kano, immediately summoned the then military governor, Colonel Wasi, and queried him, what the hell are you doing in the state when you allow such a barbaric incident of someone's head being cut off and being paraded on the street of the state? He challenged the governor to come back home and find a solution to this incident. The governor came and decided to invite an assembly of who is who. The emirs, traditional institutions, business community, the youth organizations, religious leaders, senior civil servants, commissioners, PAMSECs. I was opportune to be part of the crowd as a permanent secretary at that time in the state. They assembled us in the large hall of Africa House and threw the question to the crowd, what do we do to solve this problem? We spent hours from morning till afternoon, late afternoon, going from east to west and north to south. From top to bottom, all kinds of suggestions were being put on the table. His Highness, the late Emir of Kano, Ado Bayero, couldn't attend. He was indisposed. So he asked the then Waziri of Kano to represent him. At the end of all the presentations, Governor remembered that there was no word from the Emir. He now turned and said, Megilma Waziri, you are representing His Highness. Can we hear the message of His Highness? The old man, very learned Waziri, I'm sure some of the elders here will know Girado, Waziri Girado, famous scholar. Girado Waziri said, Your Excellency, the matter has been finished. Scholars have spoken. The like of Sheikh Nasiru Kabara were there, and all kinds of shades of opinion. The governor insisted, Waziri, you must say something. Waziri accepted to speak. He then started with a question. He asked the crowd, he said, Your Excellency, all of these suggestions propagated by all these respected citizens, whom do you think in the end will help you to achieve the desired goals? Everybody answered, the Almighty God. He said, do you really believe that it's going to be God that will answer and support you to achieve all of these proposals? We said yes. Do you believe that when he says yes, he will do it, it can be done? He asked all these questions. In the end, he said, remember, in tansurullaha yansurukum wa yathabbit aqdamakum. He said, God has given you the guarantee. If you help me, if you help my cause, if you help my deen, I will help you, and not only helping you, I will sustain your feet on the ground. He said, Mr. Governor, my advice to you is go and you and your team, go and find out what kind of help does God want. He said, doesn't need your money, doesn't need any favors from you, and yet he said, help me. Find out what kind of help he needs, do it, and see whether he will not come with his help and sustain your feet. So my message is that let us find out what do we do to promote the cause of Allah so that Allah will help us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your Excellency, thank you so very much for that message. Engineer Abdurrahman, any messages before? Okay.
We also have in our presence, yes, who are still with us, ACP Nuruddin A. Sabo, that is the Commander Metro FCT Abuja, representing the Commissioner of Police FCT Command, and Ibrahim Abubakar Ahmed, Controller Correction, representing Controller General Correction Alhaji Haliruna Baba. Please, you are all welcome to this. The next is, okay.
His Eminence Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar, CFR MNI, will now give his message through his representative, Your Royal Highness.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Mr. Chairman, I am standing in for His Eminence Sultan Muhammad Saad Abubakar, the Sultan of Sokoto. He personally wanted to be here, but he is indisposed at the moment. The invitation sent to His Eminence is being uploaded with his royal blessing from Sokoto. He equally said, our unity and future are very important to us and to the nation. All deliberations must be harmonized without bias of purpose. All discussions is to be compiled without disparity. All contributing factors that affect the Ummah must be analyzed in a way to bring progress, development in our country. We must contribute in such a way to help the government positively for development of the nation. He wishes us well and happy deliberations till the end of the symposium. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, give us more healthy life, and shower us more blessing on us and the future generation of this nation. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
That was His Eminence's message. may I call on
representative of the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Abubakar Sa'ad III, and given his blessing to the program, and urging them also to be objective and also harmonize all discussions and deliberations to share with other members of the Ummah and also with the government and policy makers and implementers as a way of proffering solutions to the myriads of challenges bedeviling the country.
By 3 p.m. Eze Abdul Fattah. Emutume. Emetuma. Okay, oh yeah. Oh, please. Yes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهب لنا من أمرنا رشدا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين نديونو والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم وقادر يما نحن والله نديون.
Thank you very much, Eze Abdul Fattah, with this closing prayer. With this, we come to the end of the program. We thank everybody, and there is tea break before the Juma. Then after Juma, we come back for the
Well, that is how it has been here at the International Conference.
manzo na kira ka ka bani kulawa zan batu kan sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale farko dai kun ga sunna TV Hausa ne kun ji babban yare Hausa ta game duka Afirka bakin mutum kai hada da farare yanzu gashi a birnin manzo Hausa ta shiga duka wurare sai ku zo ku muraye gidanmu da Hausa in kake ka zama dole mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale rayuwa asalin ta ɗabi'a in ta jaru mutum ya jaru shi mutum in bai da ɗabi'a zaka gan shi waje ya waru ya zamo bare mara kima kun ga aikuwa shi ya kwaru dan gudun haka sunna TV take shiri ku taho mu yi kalle mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale in ka duba sai ka ga malam rayuwa yanzu ta gurbace saurayi da budurwa tsoho duk ɗabi'ar su ta susuce gashi addini bid'o'i sun yawaita kazamin zance sai ku zo mu bi sunna TV shirin ta shi ya saka ni lale mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale to irin jama'ar da na kirgo baya sai ka kula da irinsu su suke muzanta sahabbai kai to dai da irin halinsu dukkan da na ce su bi sunna sai su furta ina damunsu kun ga sun bata ba addini sun batar da mutanen kulle mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale ba su kaunar dukkan sahabbai har da alul baiti iyaye sun ka zagi Umar da Sadiku ku duba yan aljanna tagwaye yanzu duba mutum mai kunya Usmanu da bai da kawaye har jinin manzon mu Aliyu batunsa ne masu ke tsalle-tsalle mun yi murna da sunna TV yan uwa ku taho mu yi lale to akwai
نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وأحسن الحديث هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. ci gaba da karatunmu na al'adab al-mufrad lil'imam al-bukhari rahimahullahu ta'ala za mu tashi darasi na 148 babi na 428 hadisi mai lamba ta 944. yau muna 22 ga watan 1 2021 tara ga watan 6 1442. babun qiyamur rajuli li akhihi, babi mai magana akan mutum ya tashi domin dan uwansa. sai Imam Bukhari ya ce mutum ya tashi li akhihi, ga ɗan uwansa na jini ko ɗan uwansa na musulunci, ɗan uwansa shaƙiƙi ko li abin ko li ummi. innamal mu'minuna ikhwa, duk mu'minai yan uwan juna ne. qiyamur rajuli li akhihi, mutum ya tashi domin ɗan uwansa. mun ce alƙiyam iri uku ne, akwai alƙiyamu lahu, akwai alƙiyamu alaihi, akwai alƙiyamu ilaihi. alƙiyamu lahu ay taqumu li ajalihi, akwai alƙiyamu alaihi, alƙiyamu ala ra'asihi, akwai alƙiyamu ilaihi, ka tashi ka tare shi. mutum ya taho sai a tashi a tarbo shi, a tashi a taro shi. wannan su ma lahu ilaihi kenan. to waɗannan ukun kowanne akwai wanda ya halatta akwai wanda bai halatta ba, duka ukun. akwai alƙiyamu lahu ay alƙiyamu li ajalihi, ka tashi don mutum, kamar da muka ce a makarantu da kotuna da gurin manyan taro da shugabanni za su zo. al'ada ta nuna idan shugaba ya zo duk a miƙe, sai ya zauna sai a zauna. Haka kotun alkali ya shigo duk sai a miƙe, sai ya zauna sai a zauna. Haka makaranta malami ya shigo duk sai a miƙe, sai ya zauna sai a zauna. To wannan miƙewar da ake yi a wajen manyan tarurruka, misali shugaban ƙasa ya zo kowa sai ya miƙe, gwamna ya zo kowa sai ya miƙe tsaye, sai ya zauna sai kowa ya zauna. To wannan shine ake son a san hukuncinsa. Me hukuncin wannan a musulunci? Ya halatta abinda muke yi muna zaune, in babba ya zo sai mu miƙe tsaye, in ya zauna sai mu zauna? To shine malam zai mana bayani. Akwai kuma alƙiyamu alaihi, wanda za ka ga odili ya tsaya a gaban ko ya tsaya a kan mai mulki, kamar shugaban ƙasa ko gwamna. Shi ciyaman ana masa, shi ma ana tsaya a kansa, tunda shi ma executive ne yayi, executive chairman. To sai a tsaya a kansa da duk wani babban mutum. Mu ma sai kaga yan agaji wata nan sun tsaya a kanmu suna zazzara ido, musamman lokacin da aka fara kai wa malamai farmaki. Da malami ba ruwansa, ko sai aka fara kashe malamai, sai wani kawai ya zo ya kashe malami. To sai aka ga cewa to yanzu ya za a yi, mu ma za a dinga mana alƙiyamu alaihi, ko ba za a yi wa malamai alƙiyamu alaihi ba. Ne mamaki wata ran a harami 2000, sai na ga malami liman ya fito, sai na ga 'yan sanda su rako shi. Na ce a haramin ma nan ba shi ya fi ko ina, wa man dakhalahu kana aminan. Sai aka raka shi gurin sallah, sai kuma naga an yi ƙawanya, su 'yan sandan da suka rako shi ba wanda ya sallah, suna tsaye suna jiran ya gama sallah, suna zazzara ido, suna kallon gabas, suna kallon yamma, suna kallon arewa. Ana ba wa liman security a harami. Sai nake tambaya wani, sai ya ce ai 1980, wato shekara 20 kenan da faruwa wannan. Wasu sun taba zuwa suka ce sun kwace haramin, suka kama limamin suka yi garkuwa da shi a cikin haramin, ko suka ce sun kame harami, sun yi garkuwa da limamai da duk masu dawafi. To tun daga nan sai aka ga cewa to ashe nan din ma dai ba a tsira ba, da haka nan ma ana bukatar a ba mutane security. Da haka aka sa kyamarori, aka ɗauki bataliyar sojoji suke kiwon harami guda biyu, sannan kuma ga 'yan sanda, ga ma'aikata, cikakkiyar bataliya, cikakkun ma'aikata mudarrabun, waɗanda aka horar da su domin su tabbatar cewa masallata suna cin kwanciyar hankali ba tare da wata barazana ba. Kaga abin ashe wato inda ƙiyamu alaihi haramun ne, yanzu ƙiyamu alaihi ya zama wani shashi ne na tsaro. Shi yasa ibnu qayyim a cikin zadul ma'ad yace manzon Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bai hana al-Mughirah bin Shu'ba ba ya tsaya a kansa a lokacin da ake rubuta sulhu Hudaybiyya. Ita abin da yasa a filin daga ne dole sai da security, amma da a gida ne ana zaman lafiya, annabi ba zai bari wani ya zo tsaya a kansa ba. In sahabbai sun tsaya sai ce ku zauna, kada ku tsaya a kaina yadda bai bayu, wato waɗanda ba larabawa ba suke yi wa shugabanninsu a tsaitsaya a kansu a lokacin da suke magana ko suke zaune. Da haka wannan sai ya zama karantarwa annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallama shine hana tsayuwa akan shugabanni a lokacin da suke magana, in ba akwai wata larura ta tsaro ba ko kuma ta kariya ba. Alƙiyamu ilaihi kuma in mutum ya taho aje a taro shi, aje a tare shi. So za mu ji duk bayanin waɗannan kalolin da hukunce-hukuncensu. Malam ibn rushdi shi da ya tashi ma ya kasa hukuncin tsayi wannan zuwa kashi 4. Ita akwai inda take zama haramun mahzur, akwai inda yake zama makaruh, akwai inda yake zama ja'iz, akwai inda yake zama mandub. Mahzur an haramta a tsaya akan mutum, akwai lokacin da yake zama makaruhi a tsaya akan mutum, akwai inda yake zama ja'izi a tsaya akan mutum din ko a tashi dan mutum, akwai kuma lokacin da yake mandubi ma an so yin haka. duk za mu ji waɗannan insha Allah ta'ala. ɗabi'ar Imam Bukhari shine ya yi babi sai kuma ya zubo dalilai na wannan babu. Ƙiyamun rajuli li akhihi zai gaya mana hujjar da ta sa ya ce za ka iya tashi domin ɗan uwanka. Sai kawo mana hadisin Ka'ab bin Malik wanda kissa ce doguwa, za mu ji wani shashi nata. حدثنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثني الليث قال حدثني أقيل عن ابن شهاب قال أخبرني عبد الرحمن بن عبد الله بن كعب بن مالك أن عبد الله بن كعب وكان قائد كعب من بنيه حين عمي قال سمعت كعب بن مالك يحدث حديثه حين تخلف عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن غزوة تبوك فتاب الله عليه وآذن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بتوبة الله علينا حين صلى صلاة الفجر فتلقاني الناس فوجا فوجا يهنوني بالتوبة يقولون لتحنك توبة الله عليك حتى دخلت المسجد فإذا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حوله الناس فقام إلي طلحة بن عبيد الله يحرول حتى صافحني وحنأني والله ما قام إلي رجل من المهاجرين غيره لا أنساها لطلحة. وانا حديثي عبد الرحمن دم عبد الله دم كعب بن مالك wato sahabi dan sahabi jikan sahabi. Shi Abdurrahman shine jikan Ka'ab bin Malik, shi kuma Abdullahi shine dan Ka'ab bin Malik. Ka'ab bin Malik yana da 'ya'ya guda 4. To wannan Abdullahi lokacin da shi Ka'ab ya girma sai ya makance. Mafi yawa sahabbai a ƙarshen rayuwarsu sun makance saboda wahala da ƙura da yaƙi da aka yi ta yi, idan duk ya gaji. Irin su Abdullahi bin Abbas, irin su Ka'ab bin Malik din, da yawa sun makance a ƙarshen rayuwarsu. To shi Ka'ab bin Malik, ka san duk inda kana son ka sha karatu to ka zama ɗan jagoran malami in ya makance, saboda kullum kana kusa za ka ta shan karatu. To shi sai ya dabara da yake ya san babansa babban malami ne kuma sahabi, shi sai ya haƙura ya zama ya masa jagora. To shi yasa yake ta shan labarai, yake ta shan hadisai, yake ta shan karatu. Anna Abdullahi bin Ka'ab wa kana qa'ida Ka'ab min banihi hina amiya. Shi wannan da Abdullahi dan Ka'ab shine jagoran Ka'ab daga cikin 'ya'yansa a lokacin da ya makance. Shi wannan dan nasa shine jagora. Da haka ashe kenan jagora wato na makaho ɗansa ma shi ya fi samun albarka. Kaga su makafin da babara suke ba, zai ga manyan malamai makafi kuma suna da 'yan jagora masu albarka. Ala sami'tu Ka'ab bin Malikin yuhaddithu hadithahu, yace naji Ka'ab dan Malik yana zantar da wannan labari nasa hina takhallafa an rasulillahi, lokacin da ya jinkiri bai samu damar fita ba tare da manzon Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallama an gazuwata Tabuk, lokacin da aka yakin Taboka. Yakin Taboka shine yaki na ƙarshe da manzon Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallama ya je. Daga shi ba a kuma yin yaƙi ba, ha annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallama ya koma ga Allah. To wannan yaƙi an samu jarabawa, domin na farko yaƙin ba a cikin annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallama ya fifita a fita a je a tarar da makiya a inda za a yi yaƙin. Wato maimakon a jira sai sun zo, sai annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallama ya fifita a bisu. To kuma Taboka in ka je daga madina za ka ga signboard an rubuta 778 kilomita 778 daga cikin madina zai kai ka 778 zai kai ka taboka daga cikin madina a mota. su da aka annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wannan kuma a hanyar mota. annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ko sai da ya kwana 50 zuwa da dawowa, ya kwana 15 suna tafiya, suka yi kwana 15 suna dawowa, suka yi kwana 20 a can. Na farko nisan yaƙi, na biyu maƙiyan da ake tsammanin za a haɗu da su rumawa ne da masu goya musu baya na cikin larabawa. Wannan ya sa annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya gaya wa sahabbai inda za a da abin da za a yi. Da haka duk munafiki sai ya girgiza, yana ga mutuwa ce kawai. Izalli wala taftinni, akwai wanda zai ce ya rasulullah ni dai ka bani izini, wallahi kada ka fitine ni, an ce ƴaƴansu suna da kyau, kada in je in fada cikin fitina. Allah ya ce ala fil fitnati saqatu, cikin fitina suka fa. Wani zai ce la tanfiru fil har, ka ku shiga rana, rana ake. Allah ya ce qul naru jahannama ashaddu harran. Wani zai zo ce wallahi ba ni da lafiya, wani ce wallahi ba ni da abin hawa, wani ce akai munafiki duk suka nemi uzuri suka ki zuwa, sai aka ban manzo Allah daga shi sai sahabbai, sai wasu yan kaɗan cikin munafikai su ma suka bi su kallo. Su dama ba sa kai hari, ba sa kai farmaki. In kun yi nasara su ce da mu aka yi, in an yi nasara a kanku su ruga da gudu, su tsorata ku, su firgita ku, su sa ku gudu. To shi wannan sahabi yana cikin waɗanda suka yi zamansu a gida, so da lokacin 'ya'yan itace sun nuna, inuwa ta yi daɗi kuma ce ka shiga rana, sai suka yi zamansu a gida. Ga su muminai, amma kuma daɗin duniya ya ɗauke musu hankali, musu bi manzo Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To da kowa ɗauka an je mutuwa za a yi, ba za a dawo ba. Wannan jarumta da ƙarfin hali na manzon Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam da ya nuna, ya bi su haccan, dan duk wanda za ku faɗa da shi ya zo gidanka to ya gama karya maka zuciya. So da haka suka gudu, suka tarwatse, ba a ma yi yakin ba. Sai annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya zauna ya kwana 20 a can, sannan ya yi kwana ya dawo. To bayan ya dawo, munafukancan da suke ganin ba za a dawo lafiya ba, sai suka ga annabi ya dawo lafiya. To sai mutum ya taho yana ɗingishi, wallahi ai tun da aka tafi nan, wato na hau abin nan na faɗo, shine dalilin rashin zuwa ne. Wani ya zo ya ce ya ataziru na ilai, kulla ta ataziru, su ta kawo hanzari, wallahi kaza, annabi ya ce ba komai ku ce duk ba komai. Sai ga Ka'ab ya taho, yana zuwa sai ya zauna ya ce ya Rasulullah ni ba ni da uzuri, ba wani uzuri, wallahi san rai ne kawai da son zuciya kawai, wallahi da gangan na ki zuwa. Da haka ni ba zan yi ƙarya ba, in ma na maka ƙarya domin kare kaina Allah zai tona min asiri. Saboda haka ai mun hukunci irin na waɗanda suka yi ganganci, ba waɗanda suka yi abu da munafunci ba. Ban je ba kuma ba ni da uzurin da zan bayar na rashin zuwa. Da haka a hukunta ni, kun ji imani. Sai annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya ce to kai ka jira, waɗancan da suka yi ƙarya Allah ya saukar da hukunci a kansu, kai kuma ka jira naka hukunci, a tashi ka tafi. Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya ce sahabbai kar kowa ya ƙare masa magana. Aka aika masa daga baya, aka ce matarsa ma ya sallame ta tafi gida. Ita in sake ta ko ya za, aka ce ba sakinta za ka yi ba, kadda ka sake kusantar ta, ka tafi. Zai zo taro ya ce salamu alaikum, sai kowa ya kau da kai. Zai shigo masallaci ya zo daidai fuska annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya zauna, wai ko annabi ya kalle, sai annabi ya sunkuyi da kai, ko ya kalli nan, sai ya tashi dawo nan din, sai annabi ya haka, sai ya tashi dawo nan din, sai annabi ya haka. Yana son su haɗa fuska da annabi, amma abu ya gagara. Ƙarshe ya rasa majalisa, ya rasa abokai, ya rasa mata, sallah ma ya daina zuwa masallaci dinga a gida saboda in ya zo ma ba mai gaisawa da shi, gashi kuma a can gidansa shi kadai. Haka aka yi kwana 50 da shi da abokansa, to sai Allah ta'ala ya saukar da nasu hukunci, ya yafe musu, yace laqad taballahu 'alan nabi wal muhajirin wal ansar wal ansar allazina tabau fi sa'atil usra min ba'di ma kada yazigu qulub fariqin minhum thumma taba alayhim innahu bihim ra'ufur rahim wa 'ala thalathati allazina khulifu hatta idza daqat alayhim al-ard bima rahabat wa daqat alayhim anfusuhum wa dhannu an la malja'a min allahi illa ilayhi thumma taba alayhim liyatubu inna allaha huwa tawwabur rahim ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. Wannan aya tana sauka, yace yana kan gidansa yayi sallah asuba, ba ma ya zuwa ko ina, sai kawai mutane sun sheko da gudu, sahabbai su masa bishara, ana ce abushir, kai farin ciki, kai ka'ab. Yace sai na faɗi ne sujjada, fa kharartu sajidan lillah, na faɗi ne sujjada cewa tunda na ji haka na san buɗi ya zo. Sai tashi ya taho masallaci, to shine dalilin hujjar hadisin da ya shigo masallacin ba wanda ya tashi ya tare shi sai Dalhatu bin Ubaidillah, shi kadai ne ya miƙe da ya rungume shi ya taro shi. To wannan abin ya kasa manta shi. Ka san ka shiga musifa, duk wanda ya taya ka jimami ba ka manta da shi. Haka duk sanda ka samu abin farin ciki, duk wanda ya taya ka murna ba ka manta da shi. Kusa da haka wannan murnar da tashi ya tare shi ya rungume shi, ya ce layan sa hali Talha, ba zai iya manta wannan abin da Talha ya masa. To shine sai je ce ya Rasulallah, wannan bisharar daga gare ka ne ko daga Allah ne? Annabi ya ce daga Allah ne. Ya karanta masa wannan aya, iji daɗi, ya yi murna da shi da yan uwansa su biyu. Ice to ni kuma zan yi wani abu, duk dukiyar da na mallaka kaf na ba da ita fi sabilillahi don in ƙara tabbatar da tubana. Annabi sai yake ce a'a, yau ka ba da dukiyar ka duka, kai ko me zaka ci, me zaka sha, ka dai dan rike wani abu a ciki wanda kai ma zaka dinga amfana da shi. Sai ce to akwai rabona da aka bani na Khaibara, shi kadai zan rike, ragowar duk na ba da shi fi sabilillahi. Saboda jin daɗin wannan tuba nasu da Allah ya karba. Don in kai tuba ma ai sai an karba, yawa to su an karba. Kun ji mahallin shahid shine inda ya tashi din nan ya tare shi, fataballahu alaihi, sai Allah ya karbi tubansa. Wa azana rasulullahi sallallahu alaihi wasallama, manzon Allah yayi shela bi taubatillahi alaina, da tubanmu da Allah ya karbi tubanmu, hina salla salatal fajri, lokacin da annabi ya yi sallar asuba. Fatalaqanin nasu faujan, sai mutane suka dinga tare na, jama'a, gungu, yuhannuni, suna mun barka, bit taubati, da karɓar tubana da Allah, yana barka, masha Allah, barka. Yaqulun litahanika taubatullahi alaika, tuban da Allah ya karɓa naka ya zame maka farin ciki. Hatta da khaltul masjida, har na shiga masallaci, fa'iza bi rasulullahi sallallahu alaihi wasallama haulahu nasu, sai ga manzon Allah mutane sun kewaye shi. Autar wayan yace fuskarsa tana kyalkyali, tana sheki, tana walwali kamar wata daren 15 sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Faqama ilayya Talhatu bin Ubaidillah yuharwilu, sai Talhatu dan Ubaidillah ya tashi ya zo gurina, yuharwilu, yana sauri, harwala yuharwilu, ka taso da gaggawa. Hatta safahani, har ya zo ya gaisa da ni, wahanna'ani, ya mun barka. Wallahi ma qama ilayya rajulun minal muhajirin ghayruhu, duk cikin muhajiruna ba wanda ya miƙe sai shi. La ansa hali Talha, ba zan manta wannan abin da Talha ya mun ba. A ce an yi kwana 50 ba mai ce mun cikanka, kuma a karɓi tubana a rana ɗaya, kowa ya hango ni, kowa ya zauna inda yake. yana nuna alamar farin ciki a fuskarsa, amma ba wanda ya tashi ya tare ni. Sai shi ya tashi ya zo ya gaisa da ni, ya ce kai ina taya ka barka da wannan tuba da Allah ya karba naka. Ita to ba zan manta da wannan, ba zan manta. Kun ga hujjar Imam Bukhari, wallahi ma qama ilayya rajulun min al-muhajirina, ko shine kaga ya tashi ya tare shi. To wannan tashin shine hujjar Imam Bukhari cewa zaka iya tashi ka taro mutum, domin shi ya taho ne, ba wai shi yana zaune ne shi kuma ya taho sai tashi ya tare shi. Wannan hujja ce ta cewa a tashi a taro mutum, kaka zauna a zaune inda kake har mutum ya ƙaraso inda kake, miƙe ka tafi, ka yi tafiya ka je ku haɗu da shi ka tarbo shi. Dama yana cikin abu masu kyau tarbe, ko a tashi a tarbo mutum. Yanzu ma tarban har bayan gari ake zuwa a jera motoci a tarbo mutum. Wani hadisi Imam Bukhari da Imam Muslim suka rawaito shi, kuma hadisin nan yana koya mana abubuwa da yawa. Daga ciki akwai izamu amrul ma'asiyati, wato nauyin sabo da laifi. In kai laifi kayi babban abu da ya kamata ka yi wa kanka jaje bisa abin da ka aikata. Sannan kuma hadarin da sabo din yake da shi. Sannan hukunci ana amfani ne da zahiri, abin da ya ɓuya sai a bawa Allah. Sannan fa'idar gaskiya da ake cewa ka faɗi gaskiya komai ta jawo maka alheri ne. Ko baka taɓa je an ce gaskiya dokin ƙarfe ake cewa, amma ita ƙarya sai a ce ƙarya fure take ba ta ‘ya'ya. Ramin ƙarya ƙurarre ne, mai ƙarya ko a ruwa gumi yake. Ƙaryarka ta sha ƙarya. Da kun ga amma gaskiya ana mata taken gaskiya dokin ƙarfe. Gaskiya ba sai dai a ce ƙaryarka ta sha ƙarya, amma ba a cewa gaskiyarka ta sha gaskiya. Ko a ce ƙarya ta ƙure, amma ba a cewa gaskiya ta ƙure, saboda gaskiya ba ta ƙurewa. Kuma gaskiya ko ka sha wahala a ƙarshe kai za ka yi nasara, ita ko ƙarya ko ka sha daɗi a ƙarshe kai za ka sha wahala. To kun ga anan sahabin nan da ya faɗi gaskiya, me yasa baka je yaƙi ba? Ice ba uzuri, ganganci ne ai mun hukunci. Su ko waɗancan da suka yi kamar sun ɓoyewa annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sun ko sun ɓoyewa annabi za su iya ɓoyewa Allah ba, sai gashi Allah ya tona asirinsu. Ya halifuna billahi li yurdukum wallahu rasuluhu haqqu an yurduhu in kanu mu'minin. Ya halifuna lakum li taradu anhu fa in taradu anhum fa inna Allah la yarda anil qawmil fasiqin. Suna muku rantsuwa cewa suna da uzuri dan ku yadda da su. Allah ya ce amma kun yadda da su aikin banza ne, ni ban yadda da su ba. To kuma Allah bai yadda da kai ba, ka tashi a banza. Sannan a cikin wannan kissa mun koyi cewa idan mutum ya fita daga wata musifa to a yi masa barka. Sannan kuma in an gaya maka wani abu da ya faranta maka rai, ka faɗi kai sujjada ga Allah, sujjada guda ɗaya. Sannan kuma an nuna mana cikin wannan hadisi halaccin idan dan uwanka ya taho ka tashi ka tare shi. Sannan wannan hadisi ya koya mana haɗuwa domin tattauna wani babban al'amari da ya taso wa musulmi, yadda annabi ya tara sahabbai ake tattaunawa akan makoma waɗannan sahabbai guda uku. Sannan ya halatta kai mutum musafaha, wato ka miƙa masa hannu ku gaisa kuma ka tashi ka tare shi. Sannan duk mutumin da ya maka abin kirki in kai dan halal ne bai kamata ka manta ba. Jibi shekarun da aka yi da faruwar wannan kissa, amma shi Abdullahi dan Ka'ab bin Malik yake cewa wa kana la yansaha Ka'ab Dalha, baya manta wannan alherin da Dalhatu bin Ubaidillah. Dalhatu bin Ubaidillah yana cikin mutanen da aka musu bashara da aljanna. حدثنا محمد بن أرعرة قال حدثنا شعبة عن سعد بن إبراهيم عن أبي أمامة بن سهل بن حنيف عن أبي سعيد الخدري أن ناسا نزلوا على حكم سعد بن معاذ فأرسل إليه فجاء على حمار ولما بلغ قريبا من المسجد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ائتوا خيركم أو سيدكم فقال يا سعد إن هؤلاء نزلوا على حكمك فقال سعد أحكم فيهم أن تقتل مقاتلتهم وتصبى ذريتهم فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حكمت بحكم الله أو قال حكمت بحكم الملك. shi kuma wannan kissa ta biyu ita ma Imam Bukhari ya yanko mana iya gurin da yake da alaka da wannan, amma dogon kissa ce, shine yakin da aka yi da Banu Quraiza. Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya tarar da gungu na Yahudawa a Madina lokacin da ya hijira ya dawo Madina. Akwai Banu Quraiza, akwai Banu Qainuqa, akwai Banu Nadir, sannan akwai kuma Yahudu Khaybar, su suna wajen gari, can suka yi birninsu a bayan gari, su ko waɗannan suna a cikin Madina. Ga kuma Maguzawa waɗanda suke bautar gumaka, su ma ɗin kowa da irin nasa gunkin. Haka Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya tarar da Madina. Ga kuma sahabban da suka yi imani da shi. Abin da yasa kaga munafunci ya fi yawa a cikin harkar shugabanci, saboda ba a taɓa yin munafunci a tarihi ba sai daga kan Abdullahi bin Ubay bin Salul. Shi kuma rigima ake ta yi tsakanin Ausu da Khazraj, wanda tushensu ɗaya, duk daga yankin ƙasar Yaman suka taso, suka hijira lokacin da wannan dam ɗin nasu ya karye, tattalin arzikin ƙasar ya watse, aka samu fari, duk sai jama'a suka tarwatse. Da su sai suka dawo nan Madina, suka zo suka shishuka dabino, suke zaune a gurin shekaru aru-aru. An ce Yahuda sun riga su zama a gurin, daga baya suka zo. Su kuma sun karanta a tarihi cewa gurin ya yi kama da gurin da Annabi zai hijira, to bari su je su tarar da shi kafin ya zo ya same su a gurin. Don su akwai karanta tarihi. To sai aka ce to ana son a kawo ƙarshen wannan rigima, aka ɗebo mutane daga ɓangaren Ausu, wasu daga ɓangaren Khazraj, aka zo aka shirya cewa a ɗauki shugaba daga ɓangaren Aus, a ɗauko mataimaki daga ɓangaren Khazraj. To sai aka ɗauko su, shi Abdullahi bin Ubay bin Salul aka ce shine zai zama shugaban Madina gaba ɗaya. Shi kuma aka ɗauko wancan daga ɗaya ɓangaren, shi kuma ya zama taimakinsa, Abu Rafi sunansa. To shi kenan ana shirin naɗa shi shugabancin nan, sai manzo Allah ya shigo Madina. Sai jama'a suka tarwatse suka tafi waje, doga Annabi ya saka tsaya wani Abdullahi bin Ubay bin Salul. Sai aka tarwatse, aka bar shi da shi da masu ɗora masa kambun sarautar, ba mutane. To wannan ciwon san shugabancin da ya riga ya ga saura kiris a ɗora masa kambun sarkin Madina, ga Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya shigo, jama'a sun watse sun tafi wajen Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To sai ya ga in bai ba Annabi ba, jama'arsa duk sun bi, zai zama daban, kuma za a yaƙe shi a matsayin wanda bai bi ba. To saboda haka sai ya raba kafa. Hassada ita ce ta juye ta koma munafunci. Sai ya ce to bari ya shiga musuluncin, amma ya rusa shi daga ciki. Kafiri a zuciya, musulmi a baki. Yaquluna bi afwahihim ma laysa fi yaquluna bi alsinatihim ma laysa fi qulubihim. Idza laqul ladzina amanu qalu amanna wa iza khalau ila shayatinihim qalu inna ma'akum la ilaha ula'i wa la ilaha ula'i. To su ne munafikai, suka raba kafa. To sai ya zama su suke bayar da liken na yadda za a shigo Madina a kama manzo Allah da sahabbai. to lokacin da Qurayshawa suka haɗa wannan bataliya ta wajen mutum 10,000 suka zo yakin gwalalo, annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya samu labari an ɗauko bataliya da sojojin haya akan za a zo a yaƙi Madina. Ya nemi shawarar sahabbai, mu fita ko mu zauna a gida. Sai Salmanul Farisi ya ba da shawara a yi ganuwa da za ta kewaye guraren da za a iya shigowa. Wani gurin dutse ne, wani gurin kwazazzabo ne, ba za a iya tafiya ba, wani gurin kuma hanya ce. To din da yake da hanyar da za a iya shigowa da abin hawa, a je a aikatar rami, a yi ganuwa. Dama ganuwa iri biyu ce, akwai ganuwa ta katanga, akwai kuma ganuwa ta rami. Duk dai amfaninta kada makiya su shigo muku da sauki. Sai aka yi wannan aikin, aka yi ganuwa, aka yi wannan yaƙi mai tsanani. hunalika tuliyal mu'minuna wa zilzilu zilzalan shadida. Isa tana da tsawo, amma a ƙarshe sai su waɗannan da aka yi amana da su, aka rubuta takardar yarjejeniyar zaman lafiya, sai suka ga to tunda yanzu an kawo wa annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam farmaki, bari su haɗa kai da waɗancan su warware alkawarinsu, su taimaka musu ta baya, su kuma su taho ta gaba, a zo a kama musulmi baki da. Aka yi ta lallashin su, ha annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sai dai ce a lallashe su, za a ba su rabin ko 1/3 na dukkan wato dabinan musulmi na Madina don su yi haƙuri, kan su haɗa kai da su. Suka ce su ba ruwansu. To da Allah ya kori waɗancan, Quraysha suka gudu, wa kafallahu almu'minina alqital, sai aka dawo kansu. Annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya ce kada wani yayi sallar la'asar sai a Banu Qurayza, duk mu tafi can. Shi da dalilin faɗa wani hadisi, aka tafi, kowa ya hau abin hawa, aka tafi unguwarsu. La'asar ta yi a hanya, wasu suka ce lokacin sallah ya mu tsaya mu sawa, suka ce a'a, annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam ya ce kan mu sallah sai a can, ko rana za ta faɗi sai mun je can. Aka rabu biyu, kuma annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam duk bai kushe kowa ba, duk da waɗanda suka yi sallah akan lokaci sun fi, amma annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam bai kushe duka biyun ba. Aka je aka zagaye garin, sai da aka kwana 25 ba shiga ba fita. Sai suka aiko cewa ai sulhu. To wani irin sulhu za a yi? Ku da muka yi alkawari da ku, za mu tsara jininku, za mu tsara dukiyarku, za mu tsara mutuncinku, kada a biyo ta kanku a cuce mu, kada a biyo ta kanmu a cuce ku. Wanda da ya saba alkawari a yi masa hukunci irin na yaƙi. Su kuma sun san hukuncin yaƙi. An riga an cika da yaƙi, so ana da uku: ko a yafe maka, ko a kashe ka, ko kuma a karɓi fansa a gare ka. To da annabi sallallahu alaihi wasallama ya tura musu Abu Lubaba ya je ya tattauna. Baba kafin zuwa musulunci abokinsu ne, sai suke dan kira mana, wai me annabi yake nufin zai mana? Zabu kai da jin haka ya suka ce to su ba sai. Shi kuma da ya haka sai ga yayi kuskure, shine ya je masallaci je dausa ba, sai in Allah ya yafe masa annabi ya zo ya kwance shi. Suka ce su yadda annabi ya musu hukunci ba. Wa kuka yadda ya muku hukunci duk abin da ya yanke kun yadda? Suka ce Sa'ad bin Mu'az. Shi kuma Sa'ad bin Mu'az din nan abokin, kuma shi yayi ta lallashin